They want to talk about the Ukrainians got all of these Nazis.
It's amazing to me that just in a few years' time, it's now considered misinformation to talk about the Nazis in Ukraine.
Well, let me tell you something. You can find Nazis anywhere. You can find them right here in the United States. In fact, a bunch of the people that they're calling victims and prisoners of war, also known as convicted felons from January 6th, I have an article that I'd like to enter into the record by unanimous consent that says neo-Nazi January 6th rioter pleads guilty.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. So here's the point. We have people in this chamber that are actually causing just as much a threat, if not more of a threat, to our own country. We should be talking about holding our very own accountable for the misinformation and disinformation that they are spreading, whether it's coming out of China, whether it's coming out of Russia, or whoever is peddling it. It is a problem because right now what we see is that people are dying and we cannot get the support that we need from the public because they continue to peddle lies. And I'm tired of it because I didn't come to this chamber to play games. I came to this chamber to answer to the people, the American people, and to make sure that we keep the American people safe.
Reapportionment is going to occur in 6 years. And the idea is that you bring a couple million, 8, 10, 12 million people into this country, and you lure them with social safety net programs, you lure them with government benefits, and they go to the blue states. They go to the cities that offer wildly disproportionate social benefits to those in need. And that's what we're seeing in New York, but they're going there. And I guess when the census occurs, it's going to result in New York and California and Illinois receiving a disproportionate percent of their representation because we do not apportion the census based off of citizens. We apportion the census based off of humans. And I mean, I think that's a big problem.
I do want to address the last things that were brought up about the census, and I'm not really sure if my colleague recognizes that Texas actually got 2 new congressional seats. The state of Texas actually grew a whopping 4 million people, and because of those 4 million people that came into Texas, or from wherever they came from, we actually got 2 new congressional seats, which Texas historically has been a red state, and New York actually lost a seat, which historically has been a blue state. So I did want to make sure we put some facts on the record.
Pretending to take that ivermectin is dangerous or claiming that it's horse medicine, would you not agree that that's the exact definition of misinformation?
I would not agree with that. They're very well done randomized trials showing no benefit of ivermectin.
And you knew that in 2021?
I was not at the FDA.
No, you didn't know that in 2021. Has ivermectin been successfully used in medical treatments?
Successfully used for worms, but no effective treatment for
It's been administered
ivermectin.
in humans billions of times over the last, 30 years? Correct?
Again, for the treatment of worms.
Dr. Califf, let me ask this. What do you think that that tweets like this garner credibility to an organization like the FDA? Do you think that snarky tweets that I would think that my teenage daughters might write, do you think that that garners credibility with the FDA and the American people?
I can't really comment on that. And again, I wasn't at the FDA when that tweet was put out.
I don't know how long you were asked about ivermectin. And let me tell you something. I don't know if you've ever testified in court, but you will be a great witness because you refused to answer the way that he wanted you to, which would have been, again, putting out misinformation.
Gentlewoman, Ms. Crockett is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I do want to clear up some actual misinformation. Dr. Snyder, when you were testifying earlier, you were actually responding to questions that were posed by another colleague from Texas. One of the questions was, who was the president in 2008? And to be clear, Obama ran in 2008, but Obama did not swear in until 2009. So when my colleague asked about invasions from Russia, actually in 2008, Russia was invading Georgia, and it was another Texan that was the president at the time, and that was George Bush. In addition to that, one of the things that my colleague did not inquire about, but I want to make sure we're clear about, is that Trump was president in 2019 when he threatened to withhold aid to the Ukrainians as they were being threatened by the Russians. So I do want to make sure that we do that. You know, what is wild to me is that this word patriot seems to be getting co-opted for propagandists, because that's what they do, all right? So we're going to talk about what my colleague from Georgia, she talked about misinformation, and I don't know what she was talking about, but nevertheless, we can look at her own tweets and we can find plenty of misinformation, but we're just going to go through one specific tweet. Now, she said that we need to work with Israel to track down the serial numbers on any U.S. weapons used by Hamas against Israel. Dr. Snyder, I may be going out on a limb, but are you aware that that was actually just propaganda that was put out and there actually were not U.S. weapons that were being used by Hamas as she attempted to insinuate in this tweet?
I mean, first of all, I appreciate the clarification. I knew that the question, who were the American presidents, was going to be the toughest one I got from that side. So I appreciate your helping me out. Yes, I mean, obviously there what you have is a typical example of American-Russian messaging where the implicit idea is supposed to be we shouldn't give weapons to Ukraine because they're going to end up going somewhere else. There's no evidence for that. It's hard to think of an example where American weapons have been leveraged with such success as on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Thank you so much. In fact, for some people, especially people that serve on the committee, they may be surprised to know that it's actually a former Russian president and Putin's sidekick, Dmitry, and I don't want to slaughter his name, so I'm going to say Dmitry M., who actually she quote tweeted. See, the problem that we're having, and the reason that we're bringing up Russia as well, is because Russia is a threat as well as China. So we are not going to sit here and pretend as if it's only one or the other. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. If it was left in Russia or China, whatever. We are talking about immigrants a lot. In fact, there's a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric and blaming of immigrants when certain things happen. And based on things coming out of this committee, we seem to believe that immigrants are the reason why crime is up and why our communities are less safe. So I did my research, and I want to go through some of it with you, specifically about Tarrant County, because I don't want you to have to know statistics about somewhere else. So with that being said, Sheriff, do you know if within the last year between 2022 and 2023, if there was an increase or decrease in murder and negligent homicide in Tarrant County?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it did not increase.
Okay. In fact, it went down by almost 17%. So great job. What about manslaughter by negligence, or we call it criminally negligent homicide?
I believe it also went down.
Yes.
It may be on ticking up at the moment on intoxicated and homicide may be ticking up at the moment in 24.
Okay, well, we had a 56.52% decrease. How about rape?
All those categories we believe went down.
Absolutely.
And I do credit a lot of incredible law enforcement and municipal police chiefs.
Awesome. So there actually was a decrease by 3.35% in rape. Robbery went down 4.5%, and both aggravated and simple assault went collectively down by 3.18%, and theft went down by 3.89%. This is at the same time in which we're talking about the migrant community and stoking these fears that they're bringing all of this trauma and this crime and violence to our communities. But when we look at a Texas community, Tarrant County, actually everything has gone down. And I do want to thank you for your service in that way, because it takes a team. It can't just be one thing. It means we've got to have great law enforcement, but we also have to have really good policies, and we honestly need to be honest about the data that we see. So overall, it shows me that Sheriff in Tarrant County, All crime was down, is what I can tell from the numbers.
I'd like to draw your attention to a tweet that I know that you're familiar with. On the post forward, it says, "You're not a horse. You're not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it." Another sarcastic tweet from the FDA read, "Hold your horses, y'all. Ivermectin may be trending, but it isn't authorized or approved to treat COVID-19. The FDA put out these messages in 2021 and made similar posts on the other platforms to discourage people from using ivermectin to prevent or treat COVID. In January 2022, the FDA was sued by a number of doctors who claimed that you were practicing medicine as an organization. As part of that settlement, you were forced to delete these. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, in fact, the U.S. Court of Appeals said the FDA is not a physician, and even tweet-sized doses of personalized medical advice are beyond your statutory authority. Is that correct?
That's what the court said.
I'm glad that the courts told you to remove these tweets, because it is snarky. I think it's demeaning to the American people, and certainly demeaning to people, I believe, in my district.
Now, Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Caleb, thank you so much for being here. You know, you are a brave man. I don't know who would want to sign up for your job, especially in a time in which it seems like we don't believe in science, or we don't know what data is, or we just gonna ignore it. I'm not really sure. I do want to do a quick level set on something, and I don't know how we continue to come back to this, but let me just ask you a few questions. Was COVID-19 real?
Yes, I had it myself twice. I think twice, once or twice.
Did people die?
Just in the U.S. alone, over 1 million people. It was in the top 3 causes of death for many months. And I had friends, you know, I was an intensive care unit doctor. When I came to FDA, I stopped practicing, but my friends in ICUs were overwhelmed. Hospitals had to have trucks backing up to the hospital because there wasn't enough room for all the dead people.
And did vaccines save lives?
Yes, thank you for asking that again. People that are up to date on their vaccines have a significantly lower risk of being dead or admitted to an intensive care unit compared to those who are not up to date on the vaccine. And the worst of all are people not vaccinated at all. That's true on the individual level. If you look at counties in the U.S., the counties with a higher vaccination rate have lower death rates from COVID. If you look at countries, you see the same general relationship. So the vaccines have been highly effective.
Thank you so much for
Not
that.
perfect, but highly effective.
I understand. I don't know that there is any perfection. I know that there's none in this chamber. Nevertheless, as a result of an administration that believes in science and data, we now have ARPA-H, which ARPA stands for Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health. And my district, luckily, was the recipient of an ARPA-H customer experience centers. And I'm so excited because this means that as we are looking at trials, as we're looking at diversifying them, we will have a great opportunity right there in Texas 30. It is a huge investment in science to make sure that we can save lives. And when the next pandemic arrives, we will actually be prepared and have science so that we can stay on top of this. Because the last time I checked, and doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, having a leader suggest that we should inject bleach. Are you aware of anyone being cured of COVID-19 because they injected bleach into their body?
I am unaware of any such thing. If I might comment in general, and this relates back to the discussion about ivermectin. I came along when heart attacks, no one knew what caused a heart attack. That was what I focused on. We tried 100 different things for the treatment of heart attack. Only a couple of them worked, the others didn't. And the only reason we knew what worked is we went from the idea to doing a well-conducted study, a randomized trial. And then, if it worked, then all the practitioners began to adopt it and use it. So we now treat heart attacks by going to the cath lab, opening the artery, and some medicines that work. Ivermectin has been studied multiple times in randomized trials, no benefit, but it is highly effective for the treatment. I use the word worms as a generic term for the kinds of infections that typically occur in places like Asia that can be devastating. It got a Nobel Prize because it's effective for those, and it's been a lifesaver, but it's been ineffective in COVID.
I completely understand. The last area that I'm going to touch on in my last 45 seconds, because I am a woman out of the state of Texas, there is no way that I am going to have a conversation and not talk about reproductive access. So out of curiosity, would you consider the medical management of a miscarriage to be potentially a life-saving usage? Yes or no?
I have to decline to answer that because
That
it's
is perfectly
under
fine.
adjudication by the Supreme Court.
That is perfectly fine. I'm gonna tell you yes, but I'm gonna give you another question that you can answer. Would you consider erectile dysfunction as a life-saving usage for Viagra?
Not life-saving.
Not life-saving. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you that based on my research, that mifepristone actually has life-saving characteristics, yet Viagra doesn't. And for those that don't know, Viagra, from my understanding, is actually nearly 10 times greater as it relates to risk of death. Yet for some reason, it's not sitting in the court right now. And I do appreciate the fact that you laid out that when it comes down to getting drugs approved, they actually go through trials. It's not just randomness. You take the randomness, you then say, maybe there's some evidence here, and then you put it through the ringer. After putting it through the ringer for decades, women's lives have been saved. And as a representative from the area that Roe v. Wade actually initiated, I am appalled because for whatever reason, some people want us to go back to horse and buggy in this country. And I think since now maybe we have the internet, maybe we should take advantage of it. And we shouldn't say that we should remain in the times of horse and buggy.